Okay, so I want to talk about Blades in the Dark, Forged in the Dark, Powered by the Apocalypse, story games, and why I likely won't ever run them again, despite having gotten a good 2.5, 3 years of good gaming out of it. And a lot of it hinges on player agency. I feel like it would be good to precede all this by talking about my background as a gamer, what led me to this style of play, and why I'm leaving it behind, leaving the town boundaries, and shaking the dust off my sandals so I don't bring any of it with me. So, in I was about 13, 14 years old. I got invited to play in a 2nd edition AD&D game with a friend from church, and that was what we played for the whole time I was in high school, basically, my teenage years. We played 2nd Ed, and it's interesting because I'm not an old guy. I'm not an old head. I'm not a grog. We played 2nd Ed because that's what the guy who was DMing knew how to play. And so I never played 3rd edition, 3.5, Pathfinder, 4th edition, etc. And it came eventually to the point where I wanted to DM my own game. And I tried a little bit with 2nd Ed, and it was complicated. There was lots of moving parts. There was lots of little variables that I didn't really understand or were never explained to me. Because as a DM, he was the kind of guy where lots of things got rolled behind the screen without your knowledge to keep the mystery and the illusion alive. And so when it came time for me to run my own game, I decided to update to, at this point, 5th edition had been released. Mighty win today. I became aware of 5th edition around 2015, and I brought my players on board. I got them excited about it, and we ran a game. We played every single week for about 1.5 years. It was which already, like, 60 plus sessions is well beyond the domain that most 5th edition games managed to reach. But despite this, there were things I was dissatisfied about, and a big part of that was how I handled session prep. To prepare for a session, I would basically plan a couple small combat encounters to kind of wear the party down a little bit, eat some of their resources, and then each session I would try to have a large set piece encounter that could challenge them tactically and from a combat perspective. And we had this Monster of the Week cycle going. We ran a couple modules. I will say that the high point of the campaign was the really excellent and extremely funny Gumdrop Mountain campaign, Assault on Gumdrop Mountain, which it's free. If you don't know what it is, it's hard to describe how wonderful it is. Just look it up. It's good. It's a good module. And after this campaign ended, and we ended it in true high schooler, like college-age fashion. We played for 7 hours and then went to sleep at the guy's house and then woke up in the morning and continued to play. We did basically a whole weekend for the finale of this game, and it was really satisfying. It was exciting. And I wanted to know what was next. And so I ran a shorter-lived game using 5th Ed after that, and it was pirate-themed, and I won't get into it. It was dissatisfying. It wasn't as good as the first time, and that bothered me. And so I thought, well, maybe... And it was at this point that I was starting to run up against the limitations of 5th edition as a system. Outside of combat between levels 3 and 10, 5th Ed struggles to provide meaningful objectives for the players. It gets you on the monster treadmill of, well, when you level up, it just means a bigger monster, a meaner monster, a more powerful enemy. And I didn't like this. I didn't like that it felt the same, but it took longer. I didn't like that increasing player level meant more abilities and more hit points, and that the assumed way to challenge them was a monster with more powers and more hit points. And so you were doing the same thing, but less efficiently. With greater granularity, maybe, is another way to look at it. And so I started, and around this time I discovered the OSR. I got into, and in particular, Lamentations of Flame Princess, which I still think is the best BX clone on the market. Nothing has come close. And after a little while of some short-lived one-shots or 5 to 10 session campaigns, and I should clarify, all of these games I only run for a group of friends that I know in real life, and it's been the same group of guys with one guy leaving or another guy joining, but broadly the same group of guys for like 15 years. Not quite 15 years, but very close to that. I got dissatisfied with 5th Ed. I switched over to the OSR, and I just can't get a campaign to take off. I can't get any momentum. So I decide maybe the problem, this is something that you get if you hung around 4chan between 2013 and 2016 at all, you're going to see the reply, well, have you tried not playing D&D? And so that's what I did. I ran games that weren't D&D. I ran Call of Cthulhu. We had a great campaign. It was set in the 70s in LA. It was awesome. I did a cyberpunk campaign. That was a lot of fun, where the players were cops. They were the Vice Squad for the NCPD. Good times. But another thing, aside from conventional other classic RPGs like Call of Cthulhu or Cyberpunk, I dipped my toes into the world of story gaming. I thought maybe the reason I can't get the game off the ground is that the narrative is lacking, that I need more narrative focus. And this is not, spoiler alert, this didn't fix my problem. But I want to talk about, I think, why it didn't fix my problem. I never ran a Powered by the Apocalypse game because the genre conceits of basically every Powered by the Apocalypse game I saw was unsatisfying. I've never really wanted to run a character-driven post-apocalyptic game. I've never had the desire to do, for the original, I've never had the desire to, dig in. The closest I ever got, I thought about running the Sprawl, which is a cyberpunk, very Neuromancer-inspired game, and I love Neuromancer. It's my favorite book of all time, but I didn't like how it hand-waved combat. And for this, cyberpunk is unmatched. I think granular, brutal, harsh combat is a huge part of what makes cyberpunk as a genre feel like what it is. But I discovered Blades in the Dark, and Blades in the Dark captured my attention. Hey, buddy. Stop crunching leaves so close to my camera. My dog's here. I was captivated by the concept of a game that was built from the ground up. Come on, go do something else. I was captivated by a game that was focused on a thieves guild. The idea of an urban campaign that's focused around heists and crime. Because I'd tried to do that using an OSR system, and it didn't work. It was awful. It was a terrible campaign. It ended in a TPK. It didn't feel good. I didn't enjoy it. So I checked out Blades in the Dark. And for probably 2.5 years, basically, Blades in the Dark dominated my idea of a good game. I ran the original game. And then I ran a bunch of hacks of it. I did a short-lived Scum and Villainy game. I did a version. You can find it on through Reddit. A Old West, like a Red Dead kind of bounty hunting, train heist sort of Wild West game. I even did a couple one-shots with my own version of the rules that I cooked up for an LA Noire detective procedural cop drama game, and I had a lot of fun. There's a lot of things I liked about it. And so I dug a little bit into the roots of story gaming. Ooh, this branch is coming right up here. I dug into the roots of story gaming a little bit, and I tried running Dogs in the Vineyard. And that's its own video. Why Dogs in the Vineyard doesn't work as a game is its own can of worms. But after a lot of trial and error and some failed attempts at returning to form with classic RPGs, I ran a Star Wars game in using Blades in the Dark. I used the Scum and Villainy rules with some variations and hacks that I'd found on the internet for doing Star Wars specifically. We did a game of some smugglers in hut space, and that game lasted 14, 15 sessions. And you know what? It was great. There was a lot of things that were really cool about it. But I've just finished this campaign, and I've come to realize that everything I liked about that game had nothing to do with the Blade system and everything to do with the quality of player I was working with and the way that I was handling the emergence of the game. And it had, And in many cases, the mechanics of Blades got in the way of what would produce a meaningful game. Now, 10, 15 minutes is about what people would expect for a good YouTube video. So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to gather my thoughts and might finish this cigar. And then I'll get into why Blades in the Dark fundamentally let me down. Why I'm returning to a conventional RPG.